I would consider now talking about the update overall. What are the thoughts of your guys about this update? And what would you rate it in scale of 1 to 10?
To be honest,
So, hello everyone into this special podcast about the new Kingdom Rush Alliance update, the Ancient Hunger. We have Dyron, Thunder XP, and King Rexy over here on our podcast. For the first time, we are having Dyron and Thunder XP, I guess. And King Rexy and I already did once live stream of Kingdom Rush Alliance, which was really fun. But yeah, we have here and we're gonna talk about this latest update in Kingdom Rush Alliance. So I hope you're all doing great, I guess.
Yeah, I would say so far it's going alright.
yeah, we are doing great.
So let's just start off with talking with the new heroes and the towers. What are your guys' thoughts about those two things, about the update, I guess?
Okay, shall I start?
Yeah. Go on.
Yeah, I'll start with Silvara. I think she's pretty fun one, and now she became one of my favorites in Alliance
Yeah.
because she's very complicated and she's the dragon, but not as OP as others, and I like it because it's not brain dead. You can just pick her and win automatically. Yeah, and she's very complicated. Her skills are very exciting and interesting. And I think on paper she is the most complicated hero, I would say, in the series.
For me, Silvara is like really interesting. One of the points which you mentioned, Dyron, she doesn't feel too much broken in game. Heroes or dragons in the entire game. Like she is dragon which you would use and you won't find too much broken in any case. With it, I think it's like she consists a lot of microing. Without microing her on right places, I think it's gonna be really tough to get her onto a really good location and attack every single enemies, as I think she doesn't attack few enemies whether they're downwards. I'm truly not sure how that works. Does one of you guys know that?
Yeah, she does have some blind spots, and I think it's map dependent sometimes. In some particular maps she can't attack normally in some places. But I think if you are playing Silvara, you just need to get used to using her and you can avoid these blind spots pretty easily. And also with it, I wanted to say that she is very high skill cap in my opinion. Her auto cancels are just crazy, and with these cancels she might have the biggest damage potential in the game.
With cancel, she's like really strong. I think it's really almost impossible to use her cancel ability on mobile version. So if someone is trying to buy it, it's gonna be really tough for them to get that canceling thing happening for them.
I see.
To be honest,
Well-
I haven't even tried to use canceling with Silvara all that much. I've never even tried that all that much, really. I don't know how good that is.
I'd say it's a quite important mechanic because, as Darren mentioned, due to the auto attack resets, you can basically unlock really high AoE damage. And even though her basic attack doesn't deal true damage as some people think, it's actually magic damage. She also has quite a couple interesting things about her basic attacks that are not mentioned anywhere. So upon killing an enemy, she summons this kind of like a thorny area, and if enemies walk through it, they get slowed by a little bit. And apparently, her basic attacks can apply bleed. I'm not sure if it's chance related or if it's like on every attack, but that's also a little bit of true damage thrown in there. So
I think this bleed is a part of her skill. It says it attacks enemy and deals damage depending on their max speed. Yeah, and it's like every 8 seconds, so she applies this bleeding effect every 8 seconds.
So it's linked to her ability, because I couldn't
Yeah.
quite figure it out. Like, how do you determine that? I always wondered how you determine the damage, because, like, do you determine the movement speed based on numbers, or is it go off of, like, percentage? Like, if it's a slow-moving enemy, it takes X amount of damage. If it's a fast-moving enemy, it takes X amount of damage every time. Or if there are, like, small differences. Let's say an enemy has 60 movement speed, the other one has 70. Would the one with 60 speed take less damage than the one with 70, or will they take an equal amount of damage? It's those little things that I'm really interested in her hero
Yeah.
design.
Yeah.
That's what makes her that interesting for me personally.
She is very unique. You know, I would say that she is probably one of the most unique heroes that we've ever had in the series, especially for a dragon too. You know,
Yep,
like that actually does set it apart.
Yeah. So in scale to 1 to 10, what would you guys rate this hero overall, with design, uniqueness, damage, performance, everything counted in? For me,
Well,
she's
when it comes to
someone who stays up
uniqueness-
8.
When it comes to uniqueness, she's definitely a 10. To be
Yeah.
honest, I mean, we've never really seen a hero like her. The two most unique heroes when it comes to dragons are probably the Yen and Silvara, just because they're, you know, when you look at a generic dragon, you know, I mean, they all kind of look the same, to be honest with you, except for the Yen
Mhm.
and Silvara as well. They both, I think they actually nailed the design.
Yeah.
Now, to be honest, I wouldn't really like to see it happen too often because I do like to mix my dragon. So, the problem with Silvara is that she does actually kind of stand out a little bit. She doesn't really mix too well. I mean, that could just be me, but
Also, Silvara cannot. Silvara is pretty much the only dragon who cannot attack flying enemies, which is really interesting.
For
yeah,
Alliance,
but I-
yes, but Ice Coat also cannot target
Yeah.
flying units. That
It was
got
changed
fixed
in
for all
Pirate
the-
Kings, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that's
Was
when
it
they
changed?
did it. I think it was during the Hammerhold DLC, though. I think that was around the time when he stopped targeting flying units.
started in
really?
the Hammerhold DLC,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, because I remember also the Demon Pit, not the Demon Pit, the Pit Lord was also unable to target flying units at
Yeah,
one point.
I remember that. Yeah, as for me, rating Silvara is, for me it's pretty easy because I really like her. She is very strong too. Her design is very cool, and I'm sure many people like it for some reasons that I wouldn't mention. But overall, she's fun to play. She has great design, great gameplay design. She's quite strong. The only weakness she has is, as you all said, she can't hit air. So for me, she's like 9 out of 10, I would say.
I think the tower is probably my most favorite thing about the update, to be honest with you, just because I really like when towers have a lot of ways that you can interact with it. So when it comes to the Bog Hermit, you can switch between modes. Like for example, like the reason why I loved Wicked Sisters from Vengeance was because of you had two ways of using the tower, and that was really fun, and it made a lot of cool and unique strategies to it. So I think having a tower like that in Alliance is really cool, because we haven't had that before in Alliance. So
I'd say in general this tower is quite solid. The only thing that I really like about it is the different targeting options when it comes down to its basic attacks. Because in Alliance it's kind of hard to fit in artillery sometimes, especially due to the fact that this game in particular really loves throwing flying enemies at you left and right. So having a tower that can have both options to target air units while also being able to deal a little bit of area damage is really nice. Plus the slow on the basic attack makes the tower even better. Like you could not only are you getting some AoE damage, you're also getting your in a way, yeah.
Yeah,
it's kind of
it's
like
quite
a mini
similar.
Ignis. Yeah, it's like a mini
And
version
it
of the
has
Ignis
pretty
Altar.
big range if you take a look at it. As for an artillery tower, I would consider it
Yeah.
quite a long range.
Surprisingly.
It
Something
has
that I
even
don't-
bigger range than it's shown. So sometimes it can hit something or across the map.
I also
Yeah,
observed this thing that if you use twiled longbows on the second level, the swamp level, I guess, sometimes the twiled longbows will start attacking a little bit before the enemies get into their radius, which is actually interesting to me. But most of the
Yeah.
time they will miss that attack, so it really doesn't matter, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably because of the long cast animation.
So as for
And
me, I found the tower like alright. I'm not much into artillery towers since coming up with Vengeance. After that, I haven't played with any artillery tower like in part of my strategy, as I just have other towers way too much powerful over there, so I normally don't use them. But this tower was pretty great. I found it really unique to use, and it was very much reliable, as it was also able to deal magical and explosive damage, if I'm correct, with slowing down enemies. It's kind of really, you can rather use it
Yeah.
as you can just put it in one spot in a level and it will do a lot of things for you in most of the situations. So that's kind of how I used it in this entire game for me. I just use it rarely, if I have to say, but I really enjoyed using it.
Yeah, as for me, I really enjoy using this tower. I think it's quite underrated too, because if you think about it, it has everything to deal with the enemies. It has ways to deal with crowds and air in the same time. And I think this passive mechanic with changing its targeting, it's the coolest one out of all of we got so far, even better than Wicked Sisters. Because to be honest, I almost never used the magical attack of Wicked Sisters. Poison is better most of the times, but for this tower I like using both. If I have one big armored enemy, I can use magic, or if I have flyers, I would also use magical. But against crowds, especially in Ancient Hunger, where these crocodiles are everywhere, explosive artillery mode is superior, and it has good range. It can slow down enemies, so it can basically do everything. And as for abilities of this tower, insta-kill is great. It has so fast cooldown, and I really like animations of both of these skills. Second skill is alright. It can stun briefly some enemies, and it's not that useful, but still, if you get additional area damage, it can come in clutch.
So
The
here's
skill,
a
I only use I only use the tongue skill. I never go for the other one, to be honest.
yeah, kind of same with me.
I mean,
Doesn't
I
seem
go
Yeah.
for
that.
I tend to go for it only if I find myself lacking stalling power, because the ability is relatively cheap compared to other or other abilities that have.
Yeah, that's true.
Like only 120 gold, and it's like 360 to max out, or a little bit less if you have favorited customer where you can discount the last upgrade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a pretty cheap ability, honestly. I really like it, and the
Yeah,
stun
I
duration
like
is
it
pretty
too.
solid. Like 4 seconds. That's not a small amount at all. That's quite a decent amount of time.
Yeah, I recently did a challenge. It's a serious challenge in my channel, purple only, and I added this tower to this challenge since one of its magical form is
Yeah.
a purple. Yeah, and I went for this ability quite often, and it was pretty useful. In this challenge, I don't have much area damage and stalling capabilities. Only longbow harassers, but you know how awful they are. So this ability is quite underrated, I would say.
With this, can we consider this tower to be the best artillery in Kingdomish Alliance? As for me, I would consider it a yes.
I would say overall, probably yes. Because it's very versatile, you can't go wrong with building this tower. It can do decent into everything, into every kind of enemy. So probably yes. As an artillery, it may be weaker than others, but still it can, at the same time, it can target air and deal with armored troops. So yeah, I would say it's probably the best.
I feel like when it comes to artillery, the tower is definitely weaker than some other ones. But when you take the tower as a whole, you know, when you take in the factor of that you can use magic attacks with it too, and some of the abilities, because the insta kill is pretty good. It actually becomes a pretty solid tower.
I'll agree. For me, it is definitely up there when it comes down to other artilleries. Probably the second best. I still think some artilleries can outperform it depending on the situation. But overall, I would say it's pretty good, especially due to the fact that it can slow on every attack, which a lot of other artilleries can't. So that adds even more utility to the tower. And it's relatively cheap when you compare the total price of other artilleries, which is quite unique. But it's kind of hard for me to classify it as an artillery because it starts off with its magic attack. So to me, it seems like more of a mage tower rather than an artillery tower. But you can definitely utilize it as an artillery if you want.
Yeah, it's more.
I would say it's
hybrid
50-50
version.
tower.
Yeah.
It's like even its abilities. One ability is definitely an artillery one to deal with groups of enemies, and the other is insta kill. And as we know, usually mages have insta kills.
I would consider now talking about the update overall. What are the thoughts of your guys about this update, and what would you rate it in scale of 1 to 10?
To be honest, when it comes to rating, I would rate Ancient Hunger an 8 out of 10. But the weird thing is, see, this is the weird thing. I actually I liked and enjoyed Undying Fury a lot more than this one. I don't know, I just like Undying Fury more than this one because it kind of felt more iconic, and I feel like, you know, when it comes to a first update, I feel like there is a lot more cooler moments to be had with a first update. Like, you know, it's always going to be the first thing that you do, so, you know, and then later on it's not going to feel as memorable, at least for me. I don't know, but I don't know, I mean when it comes to an update, like, overall, I do think Ancient Hunger is better. You know, it's definitely harder. I do like the tower a lot more. The hero, you know, it is kind of a bummer that you only get one this time, but I mean, it's still pretty cool to make up for it. I don't think anyone is beating Boneheart, though. Let's just be real.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as for me, I actually really enjoyed this one. Strangely enough, in my first try, my first playthrough, Undying Fury was harder for me than Ancient Hunger, even though I understand that Ancient Hunger is way more harder and has a lot more complicated, especially the last level.
Yeah.
But I think I just got lucky with this last level. I have beaten it with 3 stars on Impossible from my first attempt. Yeah, and overall, I would say this campaign is really good. It features a lot of interesting enemies. My favorite is probably Hydra, because it's one of the best mini bosses in the series, I would say. you really need to think about them when playing level, which I can't say about Death Woods, for example.
Yeah.
Death Woods were decent, but again, uh, you can compare them to Hydras. Weird things about this update is would be the last level.
Yeah.
Due to the RNG on this level, many people don't. Many people can't enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree that it's quite bad design, but I don't see that's being too bad. Again, you can play around it, you can avoid this tower distraction, you can do several things uh, to manage win. And
Well,
um,
you could say bad design all you want, but honestly, I personally think Ironhide was a couple steps away from making probably one of the best bosses in the entire series. I mean, visually, the boss is really good,
yeah,
Yes.
boss
and
is
I think it has
it's
something
another
unique.
topic.
Yeah,
And
but I think the RNG thing, they could have went down on it a little bit more. And to be honest, I think they should stop using tower destruction mechanics because it's kind of
Yeah.
getting too stale.
Yeah. It's
yeah, it's true.
It's never
overused,
fun.
is what I would like to say here.
Yeah. Uh,
How
but
about
again,
you? Uh-huh.
this level was still fun personally for me. Boss is incredibly good and cool. I can say only positive things about him. And
Yeah.
as for rating for this campaign, I would say it's definitely better than Undying Fury, even though I like Undying Fury still. I still think it's a really great campaign. And I think I would rate this campaign as 8.5 out of 10. It could have been 9.5 if not this uh, else like random tower distraction
Yeah.
or how long the last level. It's nearly 30 minutes, which is
Yeah.
crazy for one stage in Kingdom Rush. Uh,
That's.
but 8.5 would be my rating, I guess.
How about you, King Roxy?
I don't really mind the level taking 30 minutes though, because at the end of the day, this is Kingdom Rush, and usually with games like Kingdom Rush, a lot of the levels take a while anyway. So uh, between 15 minutes to 20 minutes. So I don't really mind that too much.
The the thing about RNG thing, as I've been tested it, I remember this that the devs were trying to create something else for the boss fight. They didn't want it the RNG thingy to be there. They wanted to have a different perspective or a different route to play against the boss. But what they wanted to implement, it didn't quite work out, and just because of that reason they were forced to keep the RNG thing. So after that, the intended way they wanted players to play the level was to save as much as gold as possible, not use the maxed out towers in most of the level until the boss fight, and just gamble here and around with one or two maxed out towers around the map, which you can just get a lot of value out of. So I think they tried to implement something bigger, but they couldn't, and I feel like that's kind of fair. I truly don't mind the RNG thing, as far as you're saving gold and you're just having even a little bit of good uh good tower compositions, you can just beat the level. And if you find it harder, you can go to a lower difficulty and play the level. So I truly don't mind the RNG thing. Overall, for me, this update's surely 8.5 to 9, somewhere around that, out of 10.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, in future, what would you guys love to see happening with boss fights? Anything you guys could suggest to I Night Game Studios? Maybe if they watch this podcast, I guess. So, I would consider them to have less RNG thing, of course, That's one of the biggest things out there right now, which we all are talking. They should rather have more things to click on, is what I would consider over here, as Origin said it. Every level having some kind of new thing is something really fun. This update did had it quite a lot of, like we got the log tower, then the beekeeper, and so many new towers, but it was just one level, and then there were no levels with in-game accessibilities or towers, I would consider. So yeah, if we could get more in each level, if less, I truly don't mind. Having a different thing to use for a specific level would make the level a lot much more cooler to me, I would consider.
To be honest, I think one of the things I would love, one of the things I would love for them to make with future Kingdom Rush Alliance content is, remember that one level on the Eyesore Tower, where
Yeah.
where right before you fought the boss, Midrius, King Dinas shows up out of nowhere, and he basically acts as a third hero. I would like to see more of that
Yes.
in specific. You know, just some kind of character showing up out of nowhere and just acting as a third hero for you to fight the boss with, for it to make it easier. I think that's pretty cool. Like, they could do that with returning characters too, and just make it even more exciting.
Yeah.
I think that would be a nice thing to do.
Yeah, that would be truly epic to me.
As for me, particularly for bosses, I would say last two bosses were really good, Navira and Abominor, but I still kinda think that they can do better, and my personal preference, bosses should have some resistances. Both Abominor and Navira have some great abilities, a lot of HP, yes, but they don't really have resistances, which means that you can kill them with any tower and it doesn't really matter. And if bosses would have at least some resistance, it would make it more interesting and make your strategy way more complicated and more interesting personally for me. And if they think that the boss will be too hard, again they can do, as Thunder XP said, they can do as a third hero feature, like with Dinas, or like with Corrupted Dinas. Vesden showed up and helped. They can do something like this for help, and but to compensate, I think bosses should be even stronger than now.
I agree.
Looks. I suppose for the boss fights, I would like to see just more difficult wave compositions when it comes down to the boss wave, because I've noticed that at least in Alliance, the boss waves don't feel threatening at all. I'm gonna exclude the Overseer out of that because that's quite a unique boss design. Kind of reminds me of another tower defense game I used to play called Oriental Dynasty, because there was this one level which kind of played like an Iron Challenge, where you just have a very prolonged wave of enemies, and the boss comes in, you do a percent of its health, then it comes back. Like it basically goes back to its original position, heals, and it spawns on a different position on the map, and you have to kill it multiple times. So if they can make difficult boss waves, that would be nice. And also, as someone else pointed, give the bosses more resistances. If anything, I would love to see a boss with hybrid resistances, because I think that would be a nice feature. Just have the boss being even more difficult than it should be, so that way you have to focus on multiple sources of damage. And most of all, just more unique abilities, because we're like the tower destruction for Abominor, we've seen it before and it's not fun to deal with. If anything, that's just a cheap difficulty. The best thing they could have done to avoid it is to make the tower destruction, at least that goes throughout the level, have a pattern, similar to that of the Overseer, where specific tower spots are gonna get targeted every time. So at least have the idea of which spots to be careful of, and you can just put a low-level tower, sacrifice it, and focus on a higher-level tower. It will make the gameplay a little bit more interesting, other than relying on RNG that one of your maxed-out towers is not gonna get clapped. So that's pretty much all I have to say for that.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, I pretty
As
much
for-
agree with all.
Yeah, as we talked about the resistance, I also realized that Silvara has like when you use her spell, she goes into complete magic resistance. Is I'm pretty sure. It's actually really interesting to see.
Yeah, she goes with completely magic resistance and medium armor, physical armor, and she also has low magic resistance as on her own without hero spell. So that's the second hero after Lucerna, which we got in Vengeance.
Well, when I think about it, for the update, I would say they almost nailed it. For me, it's a solid 9 out of 10, with the level design, the unique interactions, the enemy design. I really like the tower and the hero. I think they did a very solid job on them. But I think they butchered some of the iron challenges alongside the last level. If the last level didn't have the RNG tower destruction and it had more fair difficulty, it would be fine. And for the iron challenges on level 20 and 22, I feel like both of the options are not equally useful. You're usually just sticking with one option and you're just rolling with it for the most part. So if they fix those tiny issues, it would be a really good update. It's still decent, but I feel like a couple of things could have been added just to make it close to perfection. I won't say it's very perfect because it doesn't have any balance changes or bug fixes that definitely exist in this game, but hopefully with the upcoming DLC or even or maybe the update that will be coming out a few months after, they'll fix some of this stuff, which will be very appreciated.
As I know, let's just talk about the update roadmap we got. What do you guys think about the next update, which is kind of speculated after the DLC? What do you guys think that would possibly could be?
Oh, it's quite interesting. I almost 100% sure that it will feature Blood Sidian again, as we got with Knolls in Origins, and because we got a silhouette of spiders from second area and some kind of creature, also spider-like or crab-like. I don't 100% sure. Yeah, but I'm kind of excited about this one because it will be the first Alliance update which features old enemies. So far we got only new enemies in Undying Fury and Ancient Hunger. I'm pretty sure that DLC also would have only new enemies since it's DLC, and this one will be the first which features old enemies, and I'm interested in this one because it's harder work to do to balance a new update to be harder than second area, but at the same time featuring same enemies.
We don't really know if it's going to feature the same enemies. Like it's completely speculative, but I do think it's interesting that they haven't reused anything yet. To be honest, part of me kind of thinks that they're just gonna continue doing that. They're gonna keep making. They're basically gonna keep making all the updates with completely new enemies every single time, and they're not gonna reuse anything. Which it sounds too good to be true, but I just don't know how they're gonna keep this up. So.
Potentially. Well, I feel like the new DLC may contain new enemies, but for some reason I have a feeling it might be related to the dwarves for some reason, because we've seen dwarves in the Origins parts, so maybe they'll make a return in the DLC. Not perhaps all of them, but there's definitely going to be like new additions to their army. I can already tell that. As for the update that's going to be coming after the DLC, it's definitely related to Blood Sidian, and it has to do something with the spiders from Origins, so I think that's pretty obvious. As for the big spider, I'm not sure what it's supposed to be, but I have a feeling it might have something to do with the Brood of Macton. Maybe that will be connected in some way, because even though she died in Origins, I feel like her brood might try to avenge her and try to make a comeback. So it'll be interesting to see them now infused with Bloodsidian and how strong they
Yeah.
could be.
Or it could just be a brand new spider hero. I mean, we've never really had that before, so
Yeah,
that'd be
that
cool.
would be a positive.
Yeah, that sounds
I would love to see
interesting.
it. I would love to
As
see it.
far as you could ask me, I find it's kind of hilarious that I when I take a look at that picture, I guess I see a character holding a pickaxe. I don't know. I think it might be some character having a pickaxe in his hand who's kind of Bloodsidian creature, I guess. I'm truly not sure. I'm making things up in my mind at the moment, but if there was something like that, I would be really interesting.
Yeah, it still could be a possibility. Since, for example, they could have some Bloodsidian weapons like swords or pickaxes, and yeah, it could be anything. But the one thing that I'm sure that spiders will be there.
Yes.
For
I think
sure.
that's gonna be the place where we're gonna see spider characters in first time in Kingdom Rush Alliance. We have
Yeah,
spider characters.
aside from these spiders from second area, yeah.
So
I
yeah.
honestly forgot that those enemies even existed.
Yeah, they're kind of forgettable.
Yeah.
They're just
I also forgot about them.
They have some magic resistance, but it's not even medium, it's just low.
yeah. Okay, I think they had about 200 HP with low magic resistance, which really isn't all that much for a spider.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they are threatening when you using only Eldritch Channelers. What I basically did. Yeah, and I spent some time there and they were quite annoying. So they're not that bad if you're using only magic.
Yep.
I suppose.
So I guess that's gonna be all for this podcast. Thank you for Dyron, Thunder XP, and King Rexy for joining this entire podcast. Antidote was gonna join us, but he couldn't. Maybe in the next one we'll have him, and many other content creators in future too. That would be really awesome. So make sure you check out all of their channel. I'll link them in the description down below. You can check them out, subscribe to them all, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel too. So yeah, we're gonna meet you all in next time on our channel, or maybe back over here, who knows. Until there, keep on rushing.